Right.
Yeah, if you build a website and have a good virtual presence, taking that and drumming up business from it, at least getting people in the door to see your facility, and at that point it's okay, really get to know us and what we can do here and what we're about. We're owned by a holdings company, and so they own Fairview Manufacturing and then CTC Pressure Products.
Okay.
They're in the high pressure valve industry, so 66,000 psi and above. They even have valves that are up to 100,000 psi and above. Treat your people well and retain them, and they can surprise you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe look good on paper, interviewed well a few times, making sure that you're taking care of your employees so you reduce that risk. It comes in there.
Tom, welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. So happy to have you again, and looking forward to this conversation. Tom is just a great guy, and he has a lot of manufacturing experience. I think one of the most exciting aspects of this conversation is the fact that you've kind of worked in both sides of procurement. So now you're doing the contract manufacturing. You're trying to get in front of those people that are looking for contract manufacturers, but you've also been in a procurement position for a Fortune 250 company, and I think it's really interesting, how that has played into your strategy as a contract manufacturer. So welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you.
So tell me about just a little bit about what Fairview Manufacturing Company does, and kind of the opportunities that you're looking to get in front of, and and how you've kind of gotten to this place.
Sure. So Fairview Manufacturing's been around for about 62 years. It was owned by one family for the longest time. I came in about 3 years ago with new ownership, and we've spent the last 3 years putting a lot of money and time and effort into giving the building a facelift, cleaning, getting rid of old equipment that's unsafe, essentially. And we've purchased a couple new pieces of equipment, and we're looking to really grow strategically over the long term, and do so by hiring strategic, taking on work strategically, because we don't want to get into a point where we take on more than what we could really handle right now, and then don't put our best foot forward. So a lot of time and effort have been put into making sure that we grow slow and strategic.
So what are your physical capabilities there?
So we're a machine house. Pretty much anything that needs machined. We do a lot of 316 stainless machining, your carbon alloys as well.
Yep.
17.4, 15.5. I mean, we have a decent amount of capabilities, specifically with our new 4-axis vertical mill and our new lathe, both of which are Akumas. The lathe has a 10-inch spindle and then an 8-inch sub spindle, and also has live tooling capabilities as well. So we're getting that up to speed right now, and things are going well. Training our machinists on it and getting that up to speed has taken some time. However, once we kind of get through this learning curve, we're off and running.
That's what I was going to ask you. So what is the biggest challenge you're having right now? Would it be the training, or is there, what's something that maybe you haven't quite solved yet, but that you feel like you're making progress towards?
Yeah, I think for us is the people side of it.
Yep.
And is finding the right people to do the right thing with the business.
Yep.
And I think we're doing a good job. We've definitely had our ups and downs on the people side of things, but for me, that's been a really great experience to really get the hiring process down. How are we going to put people on performance improvement plans if we need to, and really like what to watch for, and kind of like some red flags, but also give me a lot of good experience in what is working really well for certain people. So I think that's people's biggest challenge, and the people in the industry that I've spoken to, both from even like my vendors to just other machining companies to our customers, is people is generally the biggest problem that these companies are facing right now.
Right. Yeah, and for a long time it was, kind of the hiring side of things. It was, trying to find the right employees. Do you feel like it's kind of shifted to how are you going to retain those employees? How are you going to keep them engaged?
Yeah, I think the zeitgeist of the industry is changing a little bit right now, and the attitude is, we want to make sure that we are people first. For specifically for us, anyways, it's a people first organization, and I believe a lot of organizations are going towards that because they want to retain. They understand the costs associated with hiring and training new people, so it's a lot. It's a lot better for the continuity of the business to have people there with greater experience and have kind of that know-how, that tribal knowledge of what they're doing. And so, yeah, I think it is going definitely to retaining employees, especially because with trying to find, there is a little bit of a problem still with finding the right people. And so organizations are willing to give a sign-on bonus,
Yep.
offer 4-day work weeks and things like that. That's one of the things we do. We work 4/10s.
Yep.
I'm always there on Friday, but that's a perk to our employees, is that they get a 3-day weekend. And if we do need overtime, we usually do a half day on Friday, and they still have 2.5 days for their weekend. So
Yep.
Definitely that is a challenge.
Yeah, that's a great perk, though. I mean, to be able to have those, kind of different work hours. I found that that's really been helpful in my business as well. I'm sure, Mickey can attest to the fact that we let the employees work the way they want to work. And I know it's a little bit more strict with the manufacturer, but, if you want to come in at 9, as long as you're working your 8 hours, getting your work done, we're happy with it.
Right. That flexibility is huge right now.
Yep.
With employees, that work-life balance. There's been a big shift over the last few years to really respecting that and offering that perk to your employees. And I know that's where I mean, I have 3 kids, and so my wife and I both work for full time, and both companies that we work for do give us that ability to be flexible and make up your work hours, take the kids to the doctor, pick them up from school if they're sick. And so it's a huge advantage when you're able to offer that.
Yeah, and I think it's great. I mean, why should work be such a pain in the butt? You know what I mean? Like, obviously the work is the work, but we work to live, not live to work, right? We want to be able to enjoy our families. We want to be able to enjoy activities. Our employers are the same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So what's kind of the mix in your shop age-wise? Do you have a lot of older folks working there, younger folks?
So a little bit of both. I mean, we have a couple guys that are within retirement, and so we have to look at that from a long-term viewpoint and say, we need to bring somebody in a little bit younger or in the middle of their career where they can come in and pick up that and learn from those guys that are going to be retiring the next couple of years here.
Yep.
So that's definitely a concern as a business. That's when we do our risk assessment, that's something what we talk about, is that we know that we need to get someone in here to really train and position ourselves to do that. So that's part of that risk assessment.
Yeah, and I mean, diversification is always part of any risk plan, and I think a lot of times we think about diversification in a very narrow lane, as in, hey, I need to diversify my customer base, which means that I need people in different sectors. Maybe some customers in the aerospace sector, some customers in the energy sector, etc. But really, that comes into play with employees as well.
Right. I agree. And diversification there too is not just industry segment. It could be the diversification of your capabilities,
right,
and what your product offering is to the marketplace
right.
as well. But yeah, definitely bringing in people with different backgrounds. Some people may work for small companies, some with larger corporations, and I think everyone kind of mixing together can produce a pretty nice pool of talent.
Yep. No, I feel like we could develop some sort of a cool infographic about diversification. So you have the employee side, you should have a mix of the experience plus the inexperience that are learning. You need to have a mix of industries that you work with, so that helps on kind of like a broader, economic scale. But then you're diversifying also with your capabilities in the shop. You've got, maybe some EDM, you've got turning capabilities, you've got, milling capabilities. So you have a range of different services that you can offer inside the shop, which I think is cool. And, working with a lot of manufacturers, I find some of the more successful ones have kind of a mix of the contract manufacturing offerings plus maybe a product that they've developed and they're actually bringing directly to market. But another really good key for success that I found is having, if you're a machine shop, but you also have some welding and fabrication capabilities. I think that's always a very interesting combination of skill sets. Certifications, that's another way to kind of diversify. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of ways that you could kind of put all this together.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of, just going back to what we're talking about with the talent pool, and I think there's an interesting dichotomy there too with promoting from within and being an organization that is proud to promote from within and grow that way. But there's also that fresh outlook of someone coming into going into an organization and giving fresh ideas. Yep. and being able to have a different mindset, or maybe that company did something a little bit different and it will work out and it comes in and is a huge idea for an organization. So it's one of those things that kind of pull against each other. Do we want to hire from within? Do we want to grow from the outside? So I think a little bit of both will help with that as well. But the product offerings that we were talking about, just for instance, we have a laser etcher. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps where our customers are able to, if they want us to market a specific way, if they're going to private label for one of their customers, right, we offer the ability for them to do that. Right. And then we could keep track with serial numbers, part numbers, whatever the case is. The heat code is a big one that we laser etch on parts. Yep. For our customers. So yeah, just being able to offer just those comes with. Yep. It's not a huge cost. I mean, to run something like that, obviously you have to charge for it, but it's a nice offering that kind of goes along with what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's so many ways you could go with that. So the etcher, it can do a range of different materials, right?
Correct. Yes.
It could do metals. Could it do glass?
I don't know if it can do glass. I'd have to look into that. We don't plan on ever.
The heat, yeah.
So there's also the annealing side of it too. So it can actually, it lasers, but then it also anneals onto the metal.
So I should know this, and I do understand it has something to do with heat. But can you describe annealing? What is that process?
So I think it's more so heat that it allows the metal change color. Right. Other than that, it to me reminds me of getting something coated, essentially.
Right. Right.
But I'm by no means an expert, and I could be completely wrong on that. From that.
It does seem like that, because I do have some metal finishing guys that I work with, and that annealing is mentioned in conjunction with some of their other offerings. But at any rate, what I was getting at was, I have a customer that does. They manufacture wood doors. Allegheny Woodworks out in Lake City area. They're actually surprisingly one of the largest solid hardwood door manufacturers in the country. But they use their etcher for or engraver for kind of making designs on windows. But as kind of like hobby projects, they made they can upload a picture, and then that laser program will create a program around it and etch some super cool design excuse me, into a piece of wood. So then you start thinking about novelty items or gift items that you could have a line of gift items that you make with this thing. So right. There's a lot of different things you can do, because having these machines, it's not something everybody has. And so right. You have the ability to make some really, really cool products. It just takes a little creativity, right?
Absolutely. And I do know people that have these in their garages and kind of offer as a service. So our original laser etcher went down, and we were in the process of waiting for the new one to get there. So we had product that needed engraved, and so through talking to a few people, we've got to name a number of this individual, and he helped us out. And it's just something he does. He works full time. This is something he does on the hobby as a hobby on the weekends, and it really helped us out with that. So there are guys out there that just are looking for something to do on the weekends, and it helped us out big time during that transition.
Yeah, it's a good value add service to have with your machining too. So let's jump back to your time at Parker Hannifin, just because I think it's really valuable and interesting for other fabrication shops, machine shops, contract manufacturers in general that want to build a relationship with one of these Fortune 500 OEMs. I have a lot of machine shops that, hey, we'd love to get more aerospace work. We'd love to work with, a Boeing or something to that effect. What's the biggest takeaway, biggest recommendation that you would have to a contract manufacturer? Maybe let's just picture a 20-man shop. Mm-hmm. What's your biggest recommendation to that shop if they want to get work with a Parker Hannifin or someone similar?
I think there's a big challenge there, just from the certification standpoint, the amount of quality documentation that goes into working specifically with aerospace. The AS9100 certification is a big one. But if this is a direction that you'd want to go in, is to have all those certifications in place prior to, and really make an effort to get that going. Because to go in and without those, it's definitely a lot harder to get the POs going without those certifications.
Yep. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Is there anything in the approach? So let's say I own a machine shop and I want to work with Parker Hannifin or someone of a similar size. What's my process for that introduction? How do I actually get in front of them?
That's kind of tough to do. I mean, just getting out there and just building your could we take a break for a minute? I gotta think about this.
Oh sure, yeah, no,
yeah,
that's fine. That's fine.
I don't even.
Well, I have some ideas.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's.
Well, I guess a way for you to answer the question is what did you do when you were looking for, like, if you didn't have somebody in the database?
Yeah, so that's a great question. When I was looking for specifically a vendor for prototyping, mm-hmm. the sourcing area that I led was in new product introduction, and so all the parts that we were trying to source were coming from design stage into prototype.
Yep.
And so a lot of the times, a challenge that we face is lead time, right? Your production houses were maybe 10 to 18 weeks, and we needed something in 4 to 6.
Yep.
And so there really wasn't a lot of vendors that in our current supply base that could handle that order lead time. And so we just went out and researched local places that were doing machining, mm-hmm. and we're hoping to find someone with aerospace experience there, and that really helped. And at that point, really as a sourcing agent, you're bringing in the whole entire team. Quality has to be there, engineering has to be there to really vet the supplier and make sure that all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted. Because when you give someone a PO and they don't necessarily understand the GD&T of the drawing, it makes things very challenging. They think they're making one thing, and we get something different. Just based on the GD&T experience of that vendor, right? So it was definitely tough, and then trying to find projects. Okay, what's going to be a good fit, and then finding that good fit, and then letting him run with it and see what we get from there.
Yep. So theoretically, if you had Googled, prototype machine shops in Erie, PA, and you got to a website and it had this great page on it that said, we do fast turnaround, prototypes. We have our ISO 9001 certification. We have an engineer on our team that can, assist in manufacturability of this. That would have been pretty compelling. I mean, you would have wanted to reach out to that company.
That's definitely a challenge. Is a lot of these smaller companies, and it's a challenge that we face as well, is getting our website up and running. Right. And so that it's a better user experience. It conveys the information that we want to convey to our potential customer and our current set of customers. With that, it definitely would have helped my screening process a little bit. If go to the website, you can see all the certifications, you can see what they offer from a quality standpoint. Okay, do they have a manual CMM? Do they have the right, basically the right equipment?
Right.
If being able to see that on the site and it's a showcase really. Yep. If you showcase your organization the way you should, it makes a big difference when you're going out there looking for business.
Yep. Yeah, I see so many shops that put a lot of effort, which good on them, in keeping their shop neat, organized, just great facility. They'll paint the outside, they'll, buy brand new machines, and then they don't showcase that stuff on their website. And it's, I try to make the point that you're going to have 1,000% more people see your company digitally than are ever going to see it in person. So it's really important to kind of put that equal focus into your digital presence in your website as it is in your actual shop.
I agree.
And there's also the aspect of which is kind of cool, that you are able to present yourself as something that maybe you're not even really there yet. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm not talking about misleading necessarily, but through your website, you can look like a much bigger, much more well put together company than you might actually be in reality. And a lot of people that you work with may never see that.
Right. The very big possibility. And the showcase the facility the way you want to on the website, maybe it gets feet in the door.
Mm-hmm.
You get a visit, and then really kind of showcase, and then start to build that relationship. And that's a big, and that's where everything comes from, is building that rapport and that relationship with those potential customers and your customers. So right. Yeah, if you build a website and have a good virtual presence, taking that and drumming up business from it, at least getting people in the door to see your facility, and at that point it's okay, really get to know us and what we can do here and what we're about.
Yep. So you did a lot of kind of site visits when you were in this position. You would actually go visit customers, right?
Yeah.
Or potential customers.
Yeah. So I was, I had multiple hats throughout my eight and a half years at Lord, now Parker Hannafin. I started off on the customer service side of things, customer facing. So I'd go visit customers and work with them on achieving their demand requirements. I spent some time in our tech support, so general aviation. Someone calls in, could be Boeing, it could have been someone from Texas that has a shop that that is working on a Cessna aircraft and needs to know what engine mounts and where to go get them.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I went into production scheduling, master scheduling for 2 cells at in the plant, and there was more internal facing, but I would go to a customer, key customer, at least once or twice a year to go over and work with them in their MRP, right? Making sure that our MRP system was mirroring their demand requirements, and if it wasn't, to get it updated as quickly as possible so we could drive those requirements down through the supply chain.
Gotcha. Can you describe an MRP and what the function of it is?
Yeah, material replenishment planning. It really is. It helps you plan everything that you need to achieve what you're going to be making, right? So for every manufacturing, it's the bill of material, which is going to be, in our case, raw material. 316. Is it hex? Is it round? How many parts per 24-inch stick are we going to be able to make? Then that determines how many feet I need to buy of raw material. So for a company that is making an assembly, for instance, that MRP system will help drive those demand requirements through all the way to the lowest level, which could be raw material or could be ordering of just different widgets depending upon what it is.
So how does the MRP correlate to the ERP? Are they
So
kind of
MRPs
two
are,
ways of saying this?
well, ERP is at the enterprise level. So our ERP aspect of our MRP system is what handles all of our financials, our AP, our AR, all of our financial reporting, and that coincides with that MRP.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, you've recently gone through the process of kind of setting up a new ERP MRP system.
We did, yeah. So we looked at a couple different options, right? So there were companies that provided an MRP system, and that would be strictly for demand. You put your order in, it drives demand requirements through, and you're placing orders for raw materials. It tells you when you need to release your work orders to hit the scheduled dates that you need to, based on the lead time at your vendor, based on the time it's going to take at the machine.
Yep.
And depending upon how many operations it is. So all that information had to be inputted into the MRP system. So that was one aspect of it. And then the other aspect is, okay, we had no formal system when we came in. There was an old Access database.
Yep.
And so you couldn't pull up an income statement, a balance sheet, any of your financials. You couldn't pull up a report that stated, okay, this was supposed to take 5 minutes, because that's the cycle time that we quoted based on the knowledge we had of the drawing and feeds and speeds and everything else. Well, now it's taking 7 minutes. Okay, so now we're not making as much on that. It shrinks our margin. So next time we either have to find a way to get it to 5 minutes, or we're gonna have to change the way we quote.
Right.
Right. So all that data that is critical in making decisions for a manufacturer, we didn't have at our fingertips. Right.
Yep. Which a lot of shops are in that position. I mean,
Yeah.
that's very common.
Right. And so we looked at just the MRP system, and then, okay, what about QuickBooks manufacturing? So that that's going to take all of our financials in there, but then the MRP system is going to help us with the floor, essentially. So we end up finding one that did both.
Okay.
It's called JobBoss Squared. It's
Okay.
JobBoss merged with a company called ECI, from what I understand, and that's kind of how they brought the whole enterprise system in one package.
Gotcha.
We worked a lot with the NWIRC. Andy and his team over there did a great job. And if you are a manufacturer that is looking at updating your system, getting a new one, or just starting out with one of those types of systems, give them a call.
Yep.
They really work. They have someone on staff that's super knowledgeable and can really give you an unbiased opinion of what's out there, and
Right.
basically finding a way to get you in a product that's going to be right for you and your business.
Yep.
Because not every system out there is going to be the right fit for everybody.
Sure.
So I worked with SAP a lot. Very cumbersome system, but great. I mean, you could get any bit of information that you would want out of that system. It's just knowing how to get it.
Yep.
But someone at a smaller level, that's just a lot of it's a lot of overkill.
Yep.
But you got to find something that works right for your business. And I found that the NWRC did a great job of helping me navigate that situation.
Yep. Yeah, and I would echo that. I mean, the NWRC, I've worked with them quite a bit over the years too. And for those of you who don't know what the NWRC is, I'm not going to describe it perfectly, but they really assist manufacturers in a whole range of things. They provide consulting services. They do, they can help you kind of develop some new technology, robotics that can go into your operation. Sometimes they have access to grants that can help you with different initiatives. So yeah, any manufacturers that are looking to grow in this area, in the Erie area, I think there's IRCs throughout the state. I believe there's about 9 of them. But the NWIRC is going to cover, a number of counties. I think 8 counties in this area. But yeah, great organization. So, what's the cost of implementation? If you're, and I keep using this hypothetical 20-man shop, because a lot of the, and I don't know the percentage, but I would say there's pretty large percentage of manufacturers in the area that are kind of that 2 to 20 person organization. And so I think there's a lot of, and I also think that a lot of those companies need the most help. And I would also say that they're kind of in a more precarious position than larger companies because they haven't had maybe the budgets or the time to allocate to updating their digital presence, to getting their ERP system set up, to creating employee benefit programs, all that kind of stuff. So, if you're that 20-man shop, what's the cost of implementation from a time standpoint and from a monetary standpoint?
So for us, it took about 8.5, 9 months.
Okay.
Of working on it every day.
How many people?
It was two.
Okay.
And so my time was spent a lot with the implementation, getting the data in there, determining the cost centers, basically establishing the foundation of the system, which is so important because once you hit live MRP and you hit go,
right,
and you start scheduling and you start throwing requirements everywhere, that's really where things can get bad. So you have to make sure that foundation is set early on. Now, we had a program manager with JobBoss that we met with weekly, and we had milestones and we had specific sections of the system that we had to update. And then once we updated that and it was good, they would review it with us. And if we signed off on it, they signed off on it. Okay, we're going to go to the next one now. And so that's we followed that timeline set up by the company that we're paying for the software for, and it really helped. One of the things that we did to help move this along, and also from a cost standpoint, not put so much of my time on it, was we went and looked at the multiple colleges around this area.
Yep.
We do have a good amount. I mean, Mercier's, Gannon, Barron, Edinburgh, and a lot of these students have a requirement in their educational plan to get an internship. Mm-hmm. So we found an MIS major from Barron. He came in. He worked a couple days a week, I think 3 days a week for us, and worked with his schedule around his classes. In the summertime, he transitioned to more of a full-time employee. But I mean, the cost of going out and hiring somebody full-time to manage this versus an intern was a huge cost saver to us.
Yeah.
But more importantly, for me, is that it allowed him to get some real-world experience in manufacturing, in setting up a system like this, and really helped him get a job. And he stayed local. He found a job at a local organization here in the field that he was more or less getting to get into. I would have loved to retain him, but we just weren't at that place yet. But I'm happy that he took that experience and was able to be doing what he wants to do right now.
Yeah. What a great experience for him, because for you to be able to go to any manufacturer and be like, you know what, I've been intimately involved in integrating an ERP system for a manufacturer. Like, wow, that's something you don't get at college, right?
Right.
That's super cool.
Yeah, and that's something I think that small organizations, right? So I wear a lot of hats, maybe more so than maybe in a mid-sized company, but in the small company that is Fairview Manufacturing right now, I pretty much do it all, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, having somebody like that intern from Barron come in and help support the initiatives that we're going after really helped from a cost standpoint. And I recommend that to any organization that's looking to, if you have a project and it's not getting through your gates because of the cost, and who's gonna go and really drive it home, and how are we gonna get the resources and pull people off other projects. I mean, there's enough students around this area from some really nice colleges to utilize, and they need it anyways. They need the experience,
right?
And if nothing else, we help trying to keep that talent pool in northwestern Pennsylvania,
which is incredibly important.
Huge. Yes.
Yeah, we have so few people that are going into these trades that it's extremely important that we keep the ones that do go into it here. So I would assume that there's some sort of a setup fee, because you have this consultant there kind of from JobBoss helping you guys incorporate the system. But then I would assume after the fact, there's kind of a subscription fee. Is it like per seat?
That's a really good question. There is a setup fee associated, initial startup, and then we pay a monthly subscription
Yep.
For the number of seats. And if we wanted to add seats, obviously the cost is going to go up.
Right.
But we were fairly strategic in how we wanted to run this, and so we minimized the number of seats. And
How many do you need?
So for us, we have two.
Okay.
And I'm logged in for mine as a supervisor, and then we have one in our shipping area, and that's how we're able to ship product. But we're not shipping all the time, and so like when they're not, my production supervisor at the time was able to go in and update routing and do all that. So we basically had a seat for myself and the intern, and from there we determined, okay, do we need another seat? Maybe. Could I see it happen in the future here shortly? Yeah, I definitely do. But for right now, we have two seats, and it's working out really well for what we're doing. But we have service. If we need anything, there's a line that I can call, and they update the system, which is really nice because it's cloud based. So any updates that go through, they come through overnight, and there's so far, knock on wood, we haven't had any outages during the day.
So I would assume customer support with kind of a complex application like this is probably one of the more important aspects of which solution you choose.
Right. I'm really impressed with the customer service that I've gotten from JobBoss. If there's any questions, I give them a call. They're very, wait times are very minimal. At least I've experienced that. But no, they're very supportive and knowledgeable about the system.
So if you are a contract manufacturer and you've been kind of putting this off, you realize the necessity for it. There's two questions I want to ask related to that to kind of help push you over the edge. So number one, how much money do I need to set aside to implement this? Year one, year two, just roughly.
So for JobBoss, it was fairly inexpensive. I think $5,000 and under for getting it up and using it.
That sounds pretty reasonable.
Right.
Yeah.
Now I have to factor in my time, and then I have to factor in my intern. So I really, off the top of my head, I really can't give a figure as to what that costs.
Sure. What about the ongoing cost once you finish setup?
The ongoing cost is minimal for us. It's under $500 a month.
Okay. That's very reasonable.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a story of a way that you've already seen this save you money or save you time or, help you recoup the investment that you've made.
Oh, it saves me time every day.
Yeah.
Because I have customers that call in and say, do you have any of this part in stock?
Mm-hmm.
And before, I'd have to get up from my desk, walk into the shop, go into the inventory room, and do a physical count.
Yep.
Because that's the way they were doing it prior.
Right.
This allows me to just make, with a few clicks, I can easily say yes or no.
Okay.
Without having to leave my desk. I mean, to me that's huge.
Oh yeah,
right?
it is.
I mean,
absolutely.
There was no formal way of keeping inventory track prior to the implementation of this MRP system.
Right.
I mean, they did not have anything tracked.
So I would assume it also helps kind of update customers on the progress of their jobs.
Yeah, I can easily go into a job and find out where it's at, how much time's left, how many parts are in process, complete, and be able to tell them and give them a more specific idea of when we're going to be able to ship for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a big plus.
Yeah.
Another plus is the reporting side of things. I mean, I'm able to go into I have quarterly meetings with my board where I present on the previous quarter. So I'm able to pull a lot of data out of there and present it, and it's great discussion after that.
Gotcha.
Before that happened, it was, the data was only as good as like what we could come up with from the old system, which wasn't much. So it's huge. Going from specifically like a company like Lord Parker Hannifin to where you had data for everything.
Right.
You had amazing systems, support, and then going into an organization like this where there was like nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, it was an old Access database that was put together by some of the family members, and it was easily breakable. So
yeah,
not something a growing business, or at least a business that's trying to grow and attempting to grow should have. I mean, really,
right.
The implementation of the ERP MRP system, along with the facelift of the building and the remodeling of the offices and the new equipment, and eventually here we're going to have to do more for our online presence if we want to grow, and that's really just substantiating to the market that hey, we're here, we're here and we want to grow, and we're a player, and
right.
we want to be considered one. So
yeah, absolutely. I had a kind of a weird question about boards, because I've always been, some companies have boards, some companies don't. Like, how does that come about? How do you end up with a board?
So the owners of Fairview Manufacturing are the board.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. All right. So yeah, that was just kind of an off topic question. So what prompted you to move from what I would assume is a pretty stable, pretty high paying job at Parker Hannifin to a small, becoming president of a small contract manufacturer?
So for me, it was a challenge. It was something that you don't get to do every day. I just felt like I was young enough to take the risk, and had some faith in myself and my abilities, and took a leap of faith, and 3 years later we're still going. So
yeah.
Yeah.
What was the most surprising thing to you about that transition? Something that happened that you didn't expect.
Something that happened to expect.
And maybe it wasn't something that happened. Maybe it was just you didn't understand this about being in a role where you maybe have more autonomy, a little bit more chaos.
Yeah, so I think that's probably a good one is the chaos, and being able to change hats so quickly, so often.
Yep.
And you never know who's going to call. Is it going to be vendor? Is it going to be customer? And then having to change into accounting mode, or going out on the floor and helping with something that the guys have a question. I'm not sure how to pack this. I'm not sure what to do. We broke this tool. And just some of that, definitely you feel like you're all over the place some days, right?
Yep.
Like, what did I even get done today? I've just been putting out fires.
I know exactly how you feel.
And so the HR side of it, the people side of it,
yep.
That's something I expected, and
Yep.
It's landed exactly the way I expected it to be, right? So that's at least one thing that I could take and say, okay, I expected this to be what it is from the HR standpoint.
And what prepared you for that? What prepared you for, gave you some tools that helped you deal with those HR issues and really understand different employee personalities and what motivates them?
Yeah, so, I mean, it all kind of comes down to my education. I went back to school when I was at Lord, got my MBA.
Yep.
I focused a lot on leadership, became a little bit of a leadership junkie. I listen to the podcasts on Simon Sinek. Entre leadership is a big one, but I find myself just going to books and reading a little bit more about leadership. Spent a lot of time training with Parker on that subject, and really it's about building that emotional intelligence. That it's huge, right? And understand that these are people. They're not just the title of their job,
yep.
right? There's a person there that goes home every day, that has challenges,
yep.
that deals with stress. And so if you approach it that way, it's not, I'm talking to a machinist right here. No, I'm talking to Bill, and having that mindset, I think was big for me. One thing is that I've always looked at it, doesn't matter if I'm an individual contributor or if I'm, in a formal leadership role, you could be a leader, right? And there's a couple things that I like focus on: hungry, humble, and smart, right? You want to stay motivated. You got to be humble. For me, the biggest example I can think of that is that when something goes right, it's always we.
Right.
When something goes wrong, it's I. I'll take, if something goes wrong and we did this, I'm going to take the heat off my team.
Yep.
I can stand it. But when something goes right, hey, this is a complete team effort. It's we. I think that's a big difference. And listening to people speak over the years that have been in formal leadership roles, I find that I see a lot of people, it really was, it's really
people want to take credit.
Right. Yeah. And then smart, that's where the people skills come in. And to be emotionally intelligent, not everybody has the same motivations. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by the perks, being able to say, hey, you know what? Do what you need to do. Right. That's the way I am with my teams. Do what you need to do your job to the best of your abilities. And as long as, no one's telling me different, we're good. If you need to leave, as long as I know, just shoot me an email. Got to go out. My kid needs picked up. Good to go. Like I feel like if you give people that, that could be a perk that goes beyond, monetary, right? I mean, being able to go to your kids' recitals and go. I focus on, because that's my world, right? 3 kids. That's pretty much my world. But it could be the same if they have a sick parent. If, they like to go there on their lunch break. Be reasonable with it. I know our lunch is 45 minutes. Well, it's been 50, 55 minutes. I'm fine with it. You're doing your job, and it's more important for your mental state to be able to go and do what you need to do. And it goes a long way.
Yep.
It goes a long way for sure.
Do you ever find instances where that gets taken advantage of with certain personality types?
Yep. I've seen that, and so that's where you have to be able to pivot, and then really put a plan together, ask the questions. When people are taking advantage of things, just ask the questions, and then that you already know, right?
Right.
I already know that you're not punching in because you're coming in late.
Right.
You're like, oh, I didn't punch in. Well, I have cameras. I know.
I know when you.
I know. And so, or things that go on, right? Then you have to have conversations. Hey, I need you to do this. What's going on? Do you need me to change your hours? Do you whatever the case is? It's talking with them, and sometimes eventually it comes down to that last conversation of, we got to let you go.
Yeah.
And so that's where it gets to, but it doesn't get there right overnight.
Right.
But yeah, I've experienced that a little bit now, and you roll with it, and then you have to change direction sometime.
Yep. Yeah, those are tough situations, and I feel like I'm very permissive in that people can push me for a long time, employees especially, because I do care about them as people. But they can push me for a long time before I get to the point where it's like, okay, this has to stop. And I think it's good advice, but I heard this a while back. I can't remember who said it, but he said, hire slow, fire fast. So basically make sure you're putting all the effort into vetting the person before you're hiring, make sure they're a good fit, make sure they're fit for your culture and are going to be able to perform the job well, which takes a long time. As employers, a lot of times our inclination is, that person looks really good, I want to grab him. He's going to go get a different job. So you grab him and it's like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. But then once you start to see these indicators that someone is not fixing their behavior, they don't have a desire to, you have to be able to feel that and be like, okay, we're going to have to move on here.
Right. And I like that approach. Hire slow, let go fast.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, and that's where it comes into the cost associated to hiring new people we touched on earlier. And that's why it's so, important to treat your people well and retain them, because it is such a time consuming and risk. It has risk into the business, right? You bring somebody in you don't know, and they can surprise you, right? And maybe look good on paper, interviewed well a few times, gets in there, and 6 months later, now that you put all this time and effort into training them, now they flip a switch. And so it's one of those things where making sure that you're taking care of your employees so you reduce that risk, it comes into play.
Yep. Yeah, and it's also getting a little bit more tricky. So a lot of times when you would put out a job listing and you'd get a response back, a cover, give me a cover letter and a resume. You're looking at that for, is this person smart enough to do this job? And a lot of times you can, just from reading a sentence or two, be like, I don't know about this. But now with ChatGPT, people aren't making these grammatical errors anymore. And so you're like, oh, wow, that was well written. And you're like, wait a second. This was AI generated. So that's weird too.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge that AI is going to bring us. I just read a little bit of an article this morning about the AI, the anti-AI companies that are coming out.
Okay, yeah.
Finding more on the creative space.
Yep.
And so they're like claiming, hey, we're not going to use AI in anything that we do, and are against it. And I think that's kind of interesting how we were so gung-ho with AI, and it's really driven the market right now, with specifically like NVIDIA with the chips, and so now you have this movement of people that are saying, whoa, back up, we don't want AI implemented in everything that we do. And I just think it's an interesting time to be alive.
It is. And I was kind of thinking about this. So information technology has the ability to clarify and help us understand reality better. And that's really the purpose of it. But we've gotten to a point where we've been inundated with information technology and advancement, more and more and more and more information. We're so bombarded by this information that it's reached a point at which now it's just causing confusion. And so now you're starting to see, like you said, you're starting to see companies pop up that are shrinking back or encapsulating or making modules out of information, so once again we can digest it. And I just think it's an interesting phenomenon. I didn't really have any greater point than that, but I've been kind of thinking about that.
Yeah, it's definitely, we're inundated with it, and it's not going away. And it's just, at what point are you really, as a company, going to find a way to return on the investment of going into using that technology? I guess that's something I'm curious to see over the next couple of years, because are we in the next bubble potentially, right? The AI bubble maybe. I don't know. I'm not an economist. I'm not on Wall Street, but you just wonder at what point are these companies going to use AI to start to monetize revenue and get a return on how expensive it is to maybe implement something like that into an organization.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, since ChatGPT's became very, very popular in the past couple of years, people started talking about AI. And there is this interesting dichotomy where we've been using AI for, decades now. Google is AI. And so there's a lot of AI in everything that we do. So I think we're all trying to sort out, what's this new AI? Is there more to it, or is this just a different way of saying the same thing?
That's a great point.
And how do we use it if it is something different? And I've actually spent quite a bit of time in my own business, talking to my employees, how can we use AI to do, these, how create some sort of a design or create a logo or, help us develop websites faster or things like that. And what I've kind of run into is that we haven't really been able to use any of the newer versions of AI to do much of anything for us. The only exception really is we do a lot of content generation, and we can't use AI to generate a piece of content for a client, especially in the manufacturing space, because they want their business to be talked about in a very particular way. But you can create an outline, you can generate ideas for an article, you can do a little bit of research with it. Obviously, you have to vet that research. So you can use it in some of these little ways, but there hasn't been any broad application where like we just hit a button now and it's done, you know?
Right.
So
maybe we'll get there someday.
maybe.
But yeah, I'm curious, and that's a great point you bring up. Is you've tried to implement it to where it makes sense for your business, and you're still having trouble finding a way to do that.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to keep looking at it and keep trying to use the more advanced tools, you know, in an intelligent way. But yeah, there's nothing that's just blown me away. Like, oh wow, this is new and it just did it for us, kind of thing. Although one of my cousin just showed me this. He's using what is it called, like Grok or it's a branch off of ChatGPT, but it's the image generation tool.
Yeah. Is that on X?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, he's like, what did he say? He's like, make me a picture of two people skiing, you know, whatever. And it generated this really cool image, like instantaneously. It's pretty amazing. So there's some cool things it can do.
I have seen a couple of examples of that on there. I kind of want to try it out and see.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I've thought about downloading it too. So, so the one other question I wanted to ask you about the employment or the HR side of things is, in terms of the SMART aspect of your HR model, or leadership model, what is your mechanism for understanding an employee specifically for the purpose of providing the incentives that are going to motivate them? You know, so one person might be more praise driven, one person might be more monetarily driven, you know, and another one might just want more time off. Like, what mechanism do you use to figure that out about a specific employee?
I just spend time with them.
Yep.
Really, I mean, I get to know them as people. I get to understand kind of where they're motivated, where they're not, and just, you know, ask questions. People will tell you more than they think they're telling you when you ask them questions, and they get excited about something.
Yep.
What don't they get excited for? What do they get excited for? So, yeah, it's just getting to know them as people really kind of helps me understand what they're looking for, right? And understanding like what type of employee they are from a coaching standpoint.
Right.
Is it someone that I need to support and just say, hey, what do you need from me today? And let them kind of tell me how they want me to help them in a support role, right? I have other folks that are very much that I need to coach them through situations, and some of them are I guess some people are a little bit of both. Some situations are really confident in, and I'm more of a support if they need something, and then another time they're not as confident in the aspect of what they're doing, and so they want to talk it out and they need some coaching.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just every situation is different, every employee is different, but the more you can get to know them and build a rapport with them, I think it's easier to understand like where they're at.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and I hear a lot of leaders I've talked to talk about kind of this walking management style, you know, so they're actually like patrolling the floor and talking to people and learning about them. So I think that could be one mechanism to do that. How do you structure that? Like when you walk into the shop on a given day, do you have something that you do every day before you do anything else?
Get coffee.
Get coffee, yeah. Well, that's a good first step.
Yeah, no.
Yep.
So I get in, I kind of do the same thing in the morning. I get situated. Maybe, you know, if that's a cup of coffee, it is. If it's like in something small to eat, that, you know, that's what I do. And then, you know, check my emails, kind of look at what I have on my to-do list that I made the night prior, and then do a few things. But then I go out to the floor, and so I check in with everybody. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? Like I just go individually and go talk to them. Okay, how's this job coming? You know, how long do you think it's going to take? You know, do we want to get the next job rolling? Wherever that conversation looks like. But I go to every single one. Now I have a small shop, so I'm able to do that pretty quickly. But that could be a little more challenging for someone who has more employees, 20, 30 employees. That could take a long time to go through and talk with everybody. But I really do try and make it a point every day to ask them if they need anything from me, and then just how they doing. So that's what I do. And then after I get out of the shop, I go back and go try and put out a fire, I guess.
Always putting out fires, man. So what's your next 5 years look like? Do you want massive growth? Do you want moderate growth? Where would you like to be?
I think in the next 5 years we have to continue on our strategy of controlled growth. And so I have a few positions in the organization that I would like to create, and in 5 years have that in place. Really, I mean, a buyer scheduler needs to happen. We need a new work leader on the floor. We need probably 2 more machinists in the next 5 years. I could see all that that kind of happening, and that frees my time up to do a little bit more business development and get out of the office more and really continue on that growth goal. Golf. But no, it's that business development is really a key portion of it, and we just don't have the resources right now to kind of do that more so than what we're doing right now. But building rapport with your current customer base and just asking, hey, is there anything else that you guys are struggling with right now? Is there anything that we could help with? And we're open for it. Like, just send us a quote. And worst case scenario, that you're getting the best lead time and price already, and you can easily say, okay, well, I'm going to keep it where it's at. But if we're able to do it less expensive or faster, if you need to mitigate risk by having a dual supplier. I mean, I see a lot of companies doing that right now. I mean, that's a smart thing to do.
It is.
I mean, in terms of risk assessment, you have to have at least someone that's tooled up, programmed, ready to go with a part, especially if it's something that's mission critical to your customers or your assembly. That's huge. Yep. So just by doing that and communicating with your customers and getting to know them and building a rapport relationship, we've grown that way. Now it needs to be a little bit more external focused and trying to find that new customer that can really take us to the next level.
Has anything worked for you for that kind of external business development?
So just knocking on doors, honestly.
Yeah.
Cold calling.
I've done a little bit of that. We've done a little bit of that.
We've got a couple new customers we're in the infancy stages of with them, and just by doing that, just going knock on doors, and that it worked. But there's more to it than that. When you start to look at some of the opportunities of maybe even going into like being certified to be government contractor and like work with the DoD or go down that avenue, there's things that need to be put in place if we want to do that.
You need to turn over ownership to someone a little bit less you.
Yeah. So we'll see. But that next 5 years, I'm definitely positive on, and want to keep it going. And I think we're in the right direction. I think we have the right foundation put in place right now to accomplish that.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like it. Real quick, just describe to me the relationship between you and the sister company, and kind of how you see that relationship developing, in that 5-year plan.
I think they are going to be an integral part of that, and looking at more and more what they're going to be doing in terms of their growth potential and the new business that they're going after right now. And as they acquire that business, being able to support them on the manufacturing side of it is going to be big, and it's definitely in our growth plan for sure. That we're going to incorporate that product into our into our facility.
Yeah. Do you want to give them a little plug?
Yeah. So we're owned by a holdings company, and so they own Fairview Manufacturing and then CTC Pressure Products. They're in the high pressure valve industry, so 66,000 psi and above. They even have valves that are up to 100,000 psi and above. Yep. And so a lot of water jet customers, that's the market that they kind of serve. Mm-hmm. So we work a lot with them on trying to get their products integrated where it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Not everything, right? But there's some opportunity there down the road as they expand their product line for us to take on that work.
Yeah.
But only when it makes sense. They still have to service their customers, and so we have to service our legacy customers as well. And some of the new customers that we've gathered through the last couple of years. So we have to work together and figure out how that's going to land. But gotcha. We talk about it all the time. We look at the risks associated to it, the pros, the cons. I mean, we really go through every scenario, and so where it makes sense, where it's a good fit, we may make it happen. It's been great for the business.
Good. Yeah, I need to get Zach on here next.
I think you definitely need to get Zach on here.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah.
And he's had some weird experience. Didn't he own that bar? Wasn't he involved in that?
There was a little bit from the outside. He helped the support role.
Okay.
Wasn't an owner or anything like that, but was more of a support role.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So, I know you follow some of the geopolitical, situations around the world, economic stuff. Your background in finance. What is like a weird idea that you have about what's going on and maybe its influence on business, some conclusion that you've come to that you don't think most people might have?
That's a really good question. Let me think about that for a minute. I think it's tough for manufacturers right now to look into the next year, 2 to 5, and kind of assess risk from a geopolitical standpoint.
Right.
There's a lot of unrest in the world right now, and so that goes into, okay, where are we going to be at in a year? What could escalate? What could de-escalate? If things do escalate, are we not going to get raw material from a specific area of the world? Are we going to have to go out and find other resources, manufacturers, mills, whatever the case is? And so, what is that going to do to our cost structure? What is that going to do to our long-term agreements that we have with either our customers or our suppliers?
Yep.
And so that makes things from like a global supply. If I was someone in a global supply chain role at a larger organization, I think geopolitical risk would be one of my biggest fears of where that's going to go, and at least to the point where we really have to start to strategically think about where we're at in the world, depending upon your customer base, and so that I think just how that's going to affect, because we're such a globally connected economy, that it's really hard to kind of bring it all into a smaller sphere.
Yep.
And so, if for instance, I know that what's going on, there's some things going on in China with the iron ore, and they're starting to scale back their production of that based off of kind of what's going on in their economy. And so I just
I didn't know about that.
Yeah, I just saw a real quick snippet on it Sunday when I was just reading a little bit, and so I need to do a bit more homework on how that's going to affect, how that could affect potentially raw material prices, and what that can do, from a more global standpoint. And again, I need to do a little more research, but just stuff like that.
To reinforce that, though, I was visiting a steel supplier a week or so ago, and they said that the mills have been calling them saying, hey, you need any more inventory? We want to ship you some steel. And usually it's not that way. We'll call you when we need it, not the other way around.
Yeah, usually you're begging the mill for your order.
Right. So to him, that was an indicator that something was changing. There's a surplus of steel being created here. And so it sounds like, on a global perspective, that's also kind of happening.
Right, and I think there's a lot of things that have factored into where we're at right now. I mean, you can go back as far as the financial crisis and what that did to cash flow for companies, and so they had a lot of inventory. Not everyone, right? But I think from like a kind of a macro standpoint, organizations were a little bit more liberal in terms of like what they had on the shelves, right? And so the financial crisis really kind of changed the way that manufacturers look into inventory.
Right.
And again, not everyone. I don't like making blanket statements, but I do think that there was a massive shift towards a greater responsibility of lowering inventory costs, going to more of a just-in-time delivery, and then you kind of move that through, and then you get into a situation where you have, an act of God type situation. No one saw it coming, the pandemic. So now you have this spike in demand, and you have manufacturers across the globe that have really skinned down their inventory, and then you have this huge spike in demand for different commodities, right? And so that's where you had this people were stocking out. You're trying to buy some furniture, it's like 9 months out. And normally, you go to the store, it's like 2 weeks, and so that, I think that is kind of some of the changing landscape, going back to the financial crisis, and then what that did to manufacturing, and then now something other that was huge from at a global standpoint, and just saw like what it did. And I think it's a little bit of a the problem stemmed from years ago with the financial crisis. I don't know. I kind of trying to put two and two together. Like, how is the supply chains so maxed right now? And I started thinking about what was the last big, issue that we had, right, as a global economy, and the financial crisis was the one that stuck out to me.
Right.
And I'm like, well, what changed there? And just going back to some of the experiences that I had, working with some of the large organizations, and that was one of the things, is like